Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. A Polish-owned flooring factory in Vinnytsia, central Ukraine, was damaged in a recent Russian drone strike, leaving 2 injured. While the motive remains unclear, some Ukrainian officials believe the factory may have been targeted due to its foreign ownership and economic presence. Now, as the attacks inch closer to private and foreign assets, questions arise about hybrid warfare and civilian risk. Joining us is Paulina Piasecka, Director of Terrorism Research from Civitas University, a specialist in hybrid threats, disinformation, and Eastern European security. Hello, ma'am, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, so very honorable to be here.
Appreciate it. Now, in the current phase of war, are private companies and infrastructure becoming increasingly vulnerable to becoming unintended or symbolic targets under these Russian strikes?
Yes, that's definitely true, but we do need to take into account also the fact that the Russian propaganda boasts hitting the foreign facility that actually produce weapons. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that this is true. This is a terrifying attack against the civilian infrastructure, but this is the way in which it is being framed and sort of sold to the Russian citizens, that the Russian government and Russian military are targeting the cover-ups for the foreign production of arms and weapons for Ukraine.
All right, can you help us dissect a little bit into that? It's actually quite interesting. What do you think is the intention behind kind of packaging it? Do you think that they don't want their own people to know that these foreign assets, which belongs to civilian or private companies, are being targeted? Or do you think there's also a kind of a exterior propaganda element of not wanting to potentially escalate tensions?
Well, I do think that it's mainly for the internal market, internal propaganda market. This whole special operation, as the Russian government is selling it to its citizens, is in fact the aggressive war against a country that goes against everything that we know and we believe in when it comes to the principles of cooperation between civilized nations, and also against the principles of international law. So finding any pretexts, any reasons, any ways to explain why we're actually targeting foreign nationals and foreign facilities is in the best interest of the Russian government, and the justification behind those terrifying threats just behind our eastern border.
Now, there's various experts having different opinion on how the incident actually took place. Of course, most Ukrainian pundits and officials believe the facility may have been targeted specifically, and people are also saying that this also could be a case of straight fire. What's your take on this, and do you think that the timing of this incident can be a mere coincidence?
I don't really think that anything in the military planning is a coincidence. I mean, if you take away the Murphy's laws, anything that happens with the drones targeting targets from 3 different sites and hitting all at the same time and destroying the property to an extent that makes it impossible for the company, and this has been the statement from the chairperson of the company, of the board of the company, that for at least 6 months it's going to be inactive and that the losses are still being counted and assessed. I don't believe in accidents like that.
All right, and a lot of people are also saying this is perhaps part of a hybrid warfare targeting Ukrainian allies as well. With this, I wanted to pivot a little bit about some of the more recent incidents, because we have seen a lot of cyber attacks and hacking attempt into Poland as well. Can you help us break that down a little bit?
Well, definitely, especially in case of Poland, although I'm at the same proud and at the same time very aware of the fact that it might sound just a little bit scary. We are one of the countries of the region that are targeted most within this framework of Russian hybrid warfare, because of the fact not only that we're one of the most staunch allies to Ukraine, but also because we are this transportation and logistics hub that serves as the way into Ukraine when it comes to sending in arms, weapons, and support. And so, yes, the attacks against the Polish critical infrastructure are of at least the double use to the Russian government. Triple if you count it really thoroughly, because the first one is quite obviously just the destruction of the Polish critical infrastructure. The second one is, maybe weakening our ability in supporting Ukraine. And the third one might be actually weakening the political will and the political support of the citizens that feel targeted because of the help that we are lending to Ukraine. So I'm not in the slightest surprised that Polish targets are being object of the Russian attacks.
Right, I think you brought up a very good point here. This is perhaps not just about targeting the structure, but there's also a very strong psychological aspect of it as well, targeting the population, the society at large for their help against Ukraine. And with that being said, what kind of responses do you think are available to Poland in cases where Polish link assets are being damaged abroad? And as well as the case with the cyber attack, a lot of perpetrators are actually still in Russia as well. Is there anything that the Polish authorities, the government, can do to kind of remedy some of the situations, seeing that perhaps these things are not as easily kind of dealt with?
Well, this is one of the most important principles of the generally anything that's outside of the strict framework of the military conflict, like the kinetic confrontation in the battlefield. The most important part of any defense or security system is actually being proactive rather than reactive. So we need to be prepared and we need to defend ourselves and we need to have the early warning systems, because only responding to the attacks after they have happened, this is definitely not enough because of the psychological dimension that you have already mentioned. And so I think it's about the cooperation with our partners. It's about learning how to use any information that might be a signal of the incoming threat. It's also probably about building a confidence in citizens, in the society as a whole, to become a part of this national security system, to become partner to the services in observing, in monitoring, and in potentially informing the services that there might be signals. I mean, the citizens are everywhere. They are the employees of the critical infrastructure facilities. They are the observers of what's happening in cyberspace. So employing this help of every citizen would be, I think, an immense asset to our national safety.
All right, that's actually very interesting because we don't just have the official aspect of things, but the civil society is equally as important, if not more. So can you help us elaborate a little bit of that? Are the Poles ready as a society for these type of hybrid war? And do you think that there's a general acknowledgement that it is even happening?
Well, I think that there is an acknowledgement, but I think the question about whether or not we are ready and whether or not we are ready to become this partner is actually a double-sided question, double-sided sword, because our readiness to become a united tool in defending against the foreign intervention has been actually a target of quite a long campaign of radicalization and political polarization of our political scene. And so the operation against Poland, it's not only about targeting critical infrastructure, it's also about the very, very long-term information operations that we have been noticing and monitoring since before 2016. And the way in which we function today as a society, this deep divide between both sides of the political scene, and this almost complete inability to respond in a united way, at least politically, to external threats, I think it's also an effect of external influences. It's not only the national character and our ability or lack of thereof in stating in a united manner against the external threat.
All right, that's actually a very interesting point that you brought up, that the polarization in kind of the political sphere is also making it very hard to address these type of threats, seeing that perhaps it could be weaponized rhetorically for political purposes as well. Do you have any suggestions for, be it the civil society at large, be it politicians, be it the people in charge, to sort of deal with this situation in a way that perhaps is not seen as overtly political, but in a more unified manner?
I think the change of narrative would help just a little bit. sort of derooting this idea that the world starts and ends in Poland. Most of the things that are happening right here, right now, are extremely important from the point of view of Poland and Polish citizens, but still the focus of this conflict is outside of our eastern border. And this is extremely important to remember that we are protected by the Ukrainian defense. And I think that's generally trying to shift this focus from discussing how it influences Poland to how it influences Poland as Ukraine's ally might lead to a greater understanding between the sides of this political dialogue. And also, I think that's the most solid advice that anybody can get and anybody can implement in times of information warfare, is to try to think as critically as possible and to try to get out of the information bubbles that we tend to live in and try to look at matters from more than just one point of view, even if we do agree that it's the only right point of view. If not for anything else, then just to understand how our political competitors think. That would also probably make understanding each other just a little bit more easy.
Brilliant. Practice critical thinking and focus on what unites us instead of what divides. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.